While Diane lay in a sterile ICU bed clutching a stuffed bear her grandkids forgot, her children were 2,500 miles away toasting Mai Tais on a Hawaiian beach using her credit card. They thought the old lady was too weak to fight back, but Diane had one asset they valued more than her life: the $1.2 million family lakefront cabin. They didn't realize that by the time their flight landed, they wouldn't just be tan, they'd be homeless. But rather than hearing it from me, let's hear what Diane herself had to say.
My name is Diane, and for 68 years I lived under the beautiful, crushing delusion that a mother's job was to be the soil so her children could be the flowers. I grew up in a generation where you didn't ask what you wanted for dinner, you asked what everyone else wanted and ate the leftovers over the sink. I thought that by burying my own needs, my own identity, and my own bank account beneath the feet of my children, I was ensuring they would grow tall and strong. But here's the thing about soil. If you let people stomp on it long enough without ever planting anything new, it just turns into dirt. I spent 32 years teaching third grade at Miller Elementary. 32 years of sticky fingers, grading papers until midnight, and standing on my feet until my varicose veins throbbed like a bass drum. Every paycheck I earned was a brick in someone else's house. I wore the same navy blue wool coat for 9 winters. The cuffs were frayed, and the lining was held together by safety pins, so that my son Bradley could have the newest soccer cleats, and my daughter Megan could take private ballet lessons. Robert, my late husband, used to watch me mending old clothes under the lamp in the living room and sigh. "Diane, for God's sake, go buy a new dress. The kids have enough." I'd just smile and say, "They're only young once, Robert." Robert was a builder, a man with sandpaper hands and a heart of gold. When he passed 8 years ago, he left me with a modest pension and his masterpiece, the Pine Crest Cabin. He told me it was my safety net. At the time, I thought he was being cynical about our children. I thought I was building a legacy of love by continuing to give Bradley startup loans and paying for Megan's fairy tale wedding. I didn't realize that they weren't looking at me with gratitude. They were looking at me like a countdown clock. They weren't waiting for the legacy to begin. They were waiting for the owner to disappear. They didn't want the soil. They wanted the land it sat on. And as I stood in the grocery store on that cold December morning, clutching eggnog for a family Christmas they had no intention of attending, my heart finally gave out. If you want to understand the depth of a mother's sacrifice, you have to look at the Pine Crest Cabin. To the world, it was a $1.2 million piece of prime real estate on the north shore of Lake Tahoe. To me, it was the physical manifestation of 30 years of sweat, calluses, and not right nows. Robert and I didn't just buy that house, we birthed it. In the summer of 1994, while other families were taking trips to Disneyland, Robert and I were hauling timber. I spent my summer break stained in wood sealant, my hair matted with dust, holding heavy cedar beams while Robert bolted them into place. We didn't hire a crew. We couldn't afford one. Every penny went into the materials, the hand-scraped hickory floors and the massive fieldstone fireplace. I remember the night we finished the roof. We sat on overturned paint buckets, sharing a single lukewarm beer, and Robert promised me, "This is for the long haul, Diane. This is where we'll grow old." But as Robert's health failed, the cabin became a different kind of symbol. It became a bargaining chip. After the funeral, the care Bradley and Megan provided was always transactional. They would show up for Sunday dinners, eat until they were stuffed, and then leave me with the dishes while they hurried home. Then came the financial emergencies. Bradley was the first to sharpen his beak. He came to me with tears in his eyes, talking about a tech startup that was going to disrupt the industry. He needed $45,000. He used his dead father's voice to rob me, saying, "Dad would have wanted this." I wrote the check, and 2 years later, that money was gone, replaced by Bradley asking me to pay his car insurance. Then there was Megan. For her wedding, she didn't want a party, she wanted a coronation. The $60,000 I spent on her 3-day lakefront gala was essentially her inheritance in advance. 18 months later, she was divorced. But when I asked her to sell the designer dress to help me cover a roof repair on the cabin, she called me selfish. The real betrayal, however, was the family trust. 4 years ago, they sat me down with a shark of a lawyer. "Mom," Megan said, "we're worried about you. What if you get sick? We need to put the house in a trust to keep it safe." I was 64, tired, and still grieving. I wanted to believe my children were my protectors. So I signed. I transferred the title of my life's work into the Pinecrest Family Trust. From that day on, I became a guest in my own home. They started suggesting changes, like painting over the wood Robert loved because it was too dark for Instagram. Bradley started storing his jet skis in the garage, pushing my car out into the snow. And yet, I still paid the $12,000 annual property taxes. I was the giver. I was the soil. I paid for the privilege of being their servant, babysitting their kids for free while they went on yoga retreats. I thought I was buying love. I didn't realize I was just paying the bill for my own replacement. I didn't know that to them, the cabin wasn't a home. It was an asset. They were just waiting for me to vacate. The grocery store was humming with that frantic, artificial Christmas cheer when the world turned into a sheet of white noise. It wasn't like the movies. There was no dramatic clutching of the chest. It felt like an elephant had decided to sit on my sternum. A heavy, crushing pressure that radiated down my left arm until my fingers went numb. The jar of nutmeg I was reaching for hit the floor and shattered. I followed it a second later. I woke up under the grid of fluorescent hospital lights with tubes snaking out of my arms and a thick oxygen mask pressed to my face. The monitor was chirping, a steady, rhythmic beep, 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 telling the world that my heart had survived a widowmaker blockage. By the evening of December 23rd, the heavy sedation began to lift. I was in the cardiac ICU, drifting in a hazy sleep, when I heard the unmistakable click-clack of Megan's designer heels. "Is she awake?" Bradley's voice was a low whisper, sharp with impatience. "The nurse said she's out for at least another hour," Megan replied. I heard the rustle of her silk coat. "God, it smells like death in here. I can't believe this happened now." I should have opened my eyes, but something in Megan's tone, a coldness I had never heard, made me keep them shut. I held my breath, my heart monitor skipping. "It's a mess, Meg," Bradley said. I could hear him pacing. "If she stays in the ICU through the new year, the deductible resets. We're looking at $20,000 out of pocket. The trust can't absorb that right now." "Out of pocket," Megan scoffed. "You mean out of our inheritance. If she passes before the 1st, the estate handles it under this year's cap. But if she lingers—" "Bradley, we have the Maui trip. The flight leaves in 6 hours. $12,000, Brad. I am not losing that to sit in a hospital cafeteria eating Jell-O." "I know," Bradley muttered. "But what about the bypass prep on the 26th? "We'll tell the nurses the doctor suggested absolute quiet for her recovery. We'll leave a card. She won't even know we're gone. By the time we get back on the 2nd, she'll either be ready for surgery or the problem will have solved itself." The room felt like it had dropped 30 degrees. My daughter, whose hand I held through every nightmare, was wishing for my clean break to save a vacation deposit. My son, the boy I'd given $45,000 to, was worried about a deductible eating his payout. I felt a light, fleeting pressure on my forehead. A kiss from Bradley. "Love you, Mom," he whispered, the lie hanging like poison. "See you in a week, Mom," Megan added. "Rest up." The door clicked shut. Silence returned. My heart rate began to climb until a nurse rushed in. "Diane, calm down. Your heart rate is spiking." I opened my eyes, looking at her. "Don't call them back," I rasped. "But I do need a phone. I need to call my lawyer, Marcus. And Sarah, bring me my iPad. I have some Instagram stories to watch." That night, I watched Megan's story of them boarding a first-class flight to Honolulu. Bradley posted a picture of $400 champagne. Much-needed break. Family is everything. I didn't cry. The soil had finally turned to stone. They wanted to cut the anchor loose? Fine. But they forgot one thing. I was the one who built the ship, and I was more than happy to let it sink with them on it. The morning of December 24th arrived with a pale, wintry sun bleeding through the hospital blinds. To the rest of the world, it was Christmas Eve. To me, it was day one of my new life. When Marcus, my lawyer and oldest friend, walked into my room, his face fell. He looked at the empty chairs where my children should have been, and then back at me, hooked up to a forest of machines. "Where are they, Diane?" he asked softly. "Maui," I said. The word didn't hurt anymore. It felt like stating a weather report. They told the nurses I needed quiet rest, but they told each other they didn't want to lose their travel deposit. Apparently, my bypass is an inconvenience to their tan. Marcus sat down, opening a thick blue folder. He's the one who had warned me about the trust 4 years ago. "I need to know, Marcus, is there a way out, or am I already dead on paper?" Marcus adjusted his glasses. When Robert insisted on that trust, he added a life tenant clause with a very specific trigger. He called it the abandonment clause. It states that if the beneficiaries demonstrate a gross failure of care or willful neglect during a medical crisis while the grantor is alive, the grantor has the unilateral power to dissolve the trust and reclaim the title. "Like leaving your mother in an ICU to go to a luau?" I whispered. "Exactly. I've already spoken to the head nurse. They are willing to sign affidavits confirming that Bradley and Megan were informed of your critical condition and chose to leave the state anyway. Under Section 4.2, that is a breach of duty. As of this morning, Diane, you are the sole owner of the Pinecrest cabin again. The trust is a ghost." A cold, crystalline clarity settled over me. For the first time since my heart stopped in that grocery store, it beat with a purpose. It wasn't the warmth of a mother's love. It was the sharp satisfaction of justice. "If I own it," I said, my voice gaining strength, "I can sell it. Today." Marcus hesitated. "Diane, that house is worth $1.2 million, but a sale takes time." "I don't have time. I have surgery on the 26th. I want that house sold, the locks changed, and the money moved before they check out of their hotel. Call Ridgeview Development. They've wanted that lot for years. Tell them if they can have the paperwork here by 4 p.m. and prove they can close by the 30th, the land is theirs for $950,000. Cash." "You're taking a loss," Marcus warned. "No," I replied, looking him dead in the eye. "I'm buying my freedom at a discount. Those children think they're waiting for an inheritance. I'm going to make sure the only thing they inherit is the gas station card they left on my nightstand." I picked up the Get Well card Megan had left, tore it in half, and dropped it into the biohazard bin. The mother was gone. The survivor had arrived. By 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve, my hospital room had transformed into a sterile war room. While the distant sound of carols drifted from the nurses' station, I was surrounded by Marcus and a representative from Ridgeview Development named Elias. He held a portable scanner and a stack of documents that represented the end of my children's dreams. "You're certain, Mrs. Vance?" Elias asked, his pen hovering. "This is a fire sale price for Tahoe Lakefront. Most sellers haggle for months over that view." "I'm not most sellers, Elias," I replied, my voice raspy but firm. "I have 48 hours until they crack my chest open. I want the deed transferred and the escrow opened before my heart stops again. In exchange, you get the lot. You can tear the house down to the dirt for all I care. Just make sure it's legally yours before the new year." I signed the papers with a hand that didn't shake. As Elias left, Marcus looked at me with a mixture of awe and sadness. "The house is gone, Diane. But what about the things inside? 30 years of Robert's life is in those rooms." "That's step 2, I said, reaching for my iPad. My fingers flew across the screen. "I've already hired a white glove relocation team. I want them at the cabin at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Christmas morning." "On Christmas?" Marcus asked, startled. "Especially on Christmas," I said. "My children are currently posting photos of a 4-course seafood dinner at the Four Seasons in Honolulu. They won't be checking the Ring camera. I want that house stripped. Every photo of Robert, the hand-carved furniture, my grandmother's silver, and every stitch of my clothing. If it wasn't nailed down by Robert himself, I want it moved into a private, climate-controlled vault in my name only." I spent the next few hours coordinating the logistics like a military general. I was dismantling the stage of my children's future before they could even take their bows. But I wasn't finished. "Marcus," I said, pointing to his laptop, "check the trust's secondary accounts, the ones I funded for family emergencies." He tapped a few keys. "There's about $22,000 left. One card is currently being used at a high-end boutique in Maui. It looks like Megan just spent $2,400 on jewelry. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. Report them. All of them. Call the fraud department and tell them the cards were stolen. I want those accounts frozen immediately. If my daughter wants a diamond bracelet, she can use her own credit, not the abandonment fund she thinks I'm providing. Within 20 minutes, the pending transactions began to flag as declined. I imagined Megan standing at a velvet-covered counter, her face turning beet red as a clerk politely handed back her card. I imagined Bradley trying to pay for a round of drinks for his new friends at the resort bar and being told he was cut off. On the morning of December 26th, as the orderlies wheeled me toward the operating room, I felt a strange sense of peace. Most people going into major heart surgery are terrified of what happens if they don't wake up. I was only worried about waking up too late to see the fallout. "Diane," the surgeon said, leaning over me as the anesthesia began to cloud my vision, "count back from 10. 10, I whispered. The house is sold. 9, I thought. The furniture is in a vault. 8, the cards are dead. When I finally drifted under, I wasn't dreaming of the cabin. I was dreaming of the silence, the beautiful, expensive silence of a life finally reclaimed. I woke up 4 days later in the recovery wing. The surgery had been a success. My chest felt like it had been hit by a freight train, but my blood was flowing clear and strong. Sarah, the nurse, was there when I opened my eyes. She looked nervous. "Diane, you have dozens of missed calls," she said, holding up my iPad, "and your children are in the waiting room. They've been here since last night. They're very upset. They said they couldn't get a flight back until the 1st because of the holiday rush. They've been trying to reach you." "Upset?" I rasped, a dry chuckle catching in my throat. "I bet they are. Sarah, do me a favor. Tell them I'm still too weak for visitors, but tell them they should check their email. I sent them a New Year's gift." The gift was a scanned copy of the deed transfer and a formal notice of dissolution of trust. I sat back against the pillows and waited. 10 minutes later, I heard the muffled sound of Megan's screaming from the hallway. It was the most beautiful music I had heard in years. The morning of January 2nd was biting and sharp. I had checked myself out of the hospital against medical advice, my chest held together by surgical staples and a heavy compression vest. I wasn't going to miss this for the world. As Marcus drove me up the mountain road, the Pinecrest cabin came into view. The heavy wrought iron gates were swung wide open. A massive yellow excavator sat idling in the driveway, and a Ridgeview development sign was hammered into the frozen earth where my roses used to bloom. Standing on the porch were Bradley and Megan, looking disheveled and frantic, screaming at a man in a hard hat. "I'm a trustee," Bradley was yelling, his face a mottled purple from his Hawaiian sunburn. "You can't touch this house." The foreman held up a clipboard. "The owner signed the demolition permit on the 24th, sir. This lot belongs to Ridgeview now." Marcus pulled up to the curb. The click of my car door sounded like a starter pistol. Bradley and Megan spun around and ran toward me. For a split second, I saw a flicker of the old greed in their eyes. They thought I was there to fix it. "Mom," Megan shrieked, "tell this man he's crazy. We got back an hour ago and the locks are changed. The house is empty. Where is our furniture? Where is Dad's desk?" I stood by the car, leaning on Marcus for support. I looked at Megan, then at Bradley. "The furniture is in a vault, Megan, and the desk is safe. It's the only thing in that house that was actually worth anything because Robert's spirit was in it. The rest of this, it's just wood and stone, and it's not yours." "What are you talking about?" Bradley stepped forward, his fists clenched. "We have the trust. We'll sue you." "The trust is gone, Bradley," Marcus interrupted, stepping forward with the legal papers. "You were served via email on the 30th. Under the abandonment clause, section 4.2, your mother reclaimed the title. She sold the property as the sole owner. The transaction is closed." Silence fell over the driveway. Even the excavator seemed to go quiet. "You sold it?" Megan's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. "For what? To spite us?" "I sold it for 30 years of my life," I said, stepping closer to them, ignoring the pull of the staples in my chest. It was worth every thrift store coat I wore so you could have Dior. And apparently to you, it was worth exactly $12,000, the price of your vacation. Mom, we did that for you, Bradley lied, his voice cracking. We wanted you to have peace. You wanted me to have the peace of a grave so you could collect the insurance, I snapped. I heard you in the ICU. I heard you talking about the deductible. I heard Megan wishing I'd cut the anchor loose. Well, I did. I'm the ship, and you're the ones who just realized you can't swim. Megan started to cry, that loud, performative sob. Where are we supposed to go? My lease is up. I was going to move back here. I don't know, Megan, I said, sliding back into the car. Maybe you can sell that diamond bracelet you tried to buy on my credit card. As Marcus put the car in gear, the foreman gave a signal. The massive claw of the excavator swung upward and smashed through the front bay window with a sickening, splintering groan. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. The soil was no longer being walked on. It was finally, beautifully, fallow. 6 months later, the air smells of roasted espresso beans and damp cobblestones. I am sitting on a sun-drenched balcony in Florence, Italy. My chest carries a faint, silvery scar, but my heart has never felt lighter. I don't wake up wondering if Bradley's rent is paid or if Megan's influencer lifestyle needs a fresh infusion of my retirement funds. I just wake up. The $950,000 from the sale of the cabin, combined with my savings, was moved into a private annuity that pays me $8,000 a month. It is a king's ransom in this quiet corner of Tuscany. I didn't leave my children a dime, and I didn't leave them a forwarding address. Marcus sends me brief updates. Bradley's tech startup didn't just fail, it vanished. Without my monthly investments, his creditors moved in. He's currently working in a warehouse in Reno, living with 3 roommates. He is 34 years old and finally learning what it means to earn a paycheck. Megan's fall was just as steep. When her bank account hit zero, she tried to sue me for emotional distress. Marcus laughed her out of court. She's now working at a high-end boutique, not as a shopper, but as a sales clerk, folding the very clothes she used to buy with my money. She tried to call me last month, sobbing about how family needs to stick together. I told her, Megan, I'm at a museum looking at a statue of David. He's beautiful, and he doesn't ask me for a cent. Then I hung up. People ask if a mother should ever abandon her children. My answer is simple. I didn't abandon them. I graduated them. I stopped being their servant so they could finally learn how to be adults. I took a sip of my coffee and looked out over the red-tiled roofs of the city. My children thought they were waiting for my life to end so theirs could begin. They were wrong. My life didn't end in that ICU. It just finally shed the weight that was holding it back. The Pinecrest cabin is a pile of rubble now, but I don't miss the wood or the lake. I don't even miss the woman I used to be. I am Diane. I have a new heart, a new country, and a very expensive peace of mind. For the first time in 68 years, I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, free.
Diane finally found the peace she deserved, but it came at a staggering cost. Looking at the way Bradley and Megan chose a vacation over their own mother's life, who do you think was truly at fault for the family's collapse? Was it the children's greed, or did Diane wait too long to set boundaries? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It's important to note that while the emotions are real, this story was a dramatized scenario created specifically for societal reform and educational awareness. We share these stories to highlight dark realities, but we strongly warn our audience, do not repeat these toxic behaviors or legal schemes in your own lives. The goal is to learn from these mistakes, not to replicate them. In the end, karma always finds a way to balance the scales. If you found value in this lesson today, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to join our community for a new story every day.